Cue the violins.
What to expect in the Florida housing market 2022. Chris, what should we expect in the housing market in Florida? We know people are kind of moving into the area.
Yes, sir. Tons of people are moving into the area. So I'm going to go over the why before I go over the what with you. So the why is I just lost a customer last night. And honestly, it was because I did not prepare them for what to expect in this market. People who are not familiar with this market sometimes get blindsided by the ugly truth. So about 1,000 people a day are moving to Florida, which means property values are soaring because the amount of houses cannot keep up with the demand fast enough. So therefore, when the demand rises, the prices rise. Because 1,000 people a day are moving here, you're looking at bidding wars. So sometimes I've seen as many as 100 offers on a house. That's like waterfront property. That's where you're going to get those types of numbers. But the average house, 10, 12 offers sometimes. And so only one of those can be chosen.
Yeah.
And I feel like where I didn't prepare my clients was telling them that they were going to encounter a ton of competition. And so when they didn't get under contract by the second and third house, they're like, we're going to switch cities. We're going to switch realtors, And
when in reality, like, it's just a Florida thing. Like, it's just
a Florida thing, man. If you got 10 or 12 offers, it doesn't mean, only one of those can be chosen. So if you got 12 offers, it doesn't mean that the other 11 realtors didn't do their job. It just means that someone more financially fit came in behind you and put a better offer,
Right.
Especially a lot of these Northerners who are selling the same size house, but up north, that house might be $600,000, $700,000. And so, they don't mind putting a few extra bucks on a house down here because of low costs,
Yeah.
So
like, relative to what they sold their house for. Yeah. They're trying to, they're just trying to like get a house.
Exactly. So you're going to encounter bidding wars. And the idea behind it is to just go in with low expectations, not lower your standards on a house. You should absolutely only put bids on houses that you want. However, don't expect to get the first house the first time. Just, all right, first day on the market. All right, let's put an offer and we'll move in 30 days. It doesn't always happen like that. It almost never does. In fact, you're going to lose out on a few before you get them. It's just about stacking your numbers.
Yeah, that's a good way to approach it, because then otherwise you're going to be like super sad. You're going to be discouraged thinking that screw this market. Like,
I wish my customers the best. They're absolutely sweet people. Unfortunately, it's going to happen with an ex-realtor too. They're and I hope they get under contract fairly soon. But the cities that they mentioned that they're wanting to switch to, they cost twice as much as Ocala does. So I'm going to let them figure out, where is best for them and what's best for them. It's just the numbers here; they're not always in your favor. So you really have to come in aggressive with your offers, and sometimes you got to put multiple offers on multiple properties to get the one you want.
Yeah. Gosh, when the pandemic first hit and the housing started going up like that, and it was like, oh, it'll cool off eventually. It hasn't cooled off. It's still going.
It's not just the pandemic. People love this area because, especially they don't mandate masks or anything like that here. They don't mandate really anything. Ocala stayed pretty much the same as always when the pandemic hit, which started getting people's eyes on it. But when they built the World Equestrian Center and they started developing more of the land here, and the lower cost of living, it started just booming and we're not seeing any drop off anytime soon. They're developing, they're building new warehouses. It's becoming really industrial in some of these parts. So a lot of growth happening. Prices are going to keep going up.
Yeah. As long as people keep moving to Florida. So
yeah.
And the mass exodus from California now. I personally have I see people on my social media who are moving to Florida, and I'm like, oh wow, that's cool. And they're business owners. They're very high caliber individuals. So I'm like, oh wow, like that's interesting. When you see people like that moving, you're like, why are they moving? Kind of a thing. So it's an interesting thing to kind of watch.
Yeah. Financially, it's smart, man. A lot of people in those states can't afford to buy within their own state because of how everything is. You have someone who, when they bought, maybe had a $300,000 mortgage, and after the last several years, suddenly it's $600,000 to $700,000 to buy the same house. I can't afford for my bills to double.
Yeah. No, it's insane. Yeah, most people in California, they can't afford to buy. It is, yeah, and that's just specific to California, but I'm sure, New York and different areas, it's kind of a similar type of practice. But let's move on to the lending. What to expect and stuff.
So because of the crash that happened in '08, lending has been super weird lately. That's the best way to put it. The underwriters, they like to comb through everything with a fine-tooth comb, and so sometimes you're gonna have to answer weird questions that you would never think were totally even close to being relevant to the deal that you're doing. When I moved, I had to take a picture of my Facebook to prove that Angela and I were in a relationship together. I did a deal last year in September for a guy, and he had to prove that he was not paying child support for a 25-year-old kid.
25, a 25-year-old?
A 25-year-old, yeah. And I was like, what? I'm sure there's, people who have to back child. So I don't know what his story was, but
got it.
What? So you're going to have to answer some weird questions. And sometimes the lenders, they like to just slow down the process. I know it's not intentional. A lot of it is new laws and restrictions and policies that they have, but it's not as simple as just, run credit. Okay, what house do you want to buy? They comb through every dollar in every account that they can, trace that is even linked to your name or your loved ones, stuff like that. If someone gifts you, $5,000 for closing costs, you're going to have to prove where that money came from, how they're related to you. It's crazy. So it's going to feel very invasive, the lending process, and it's going to feel very frustrating because you're going to have to answer questions you never thought you'd have to answer, to a banker. So yeah, because lending's gotten so strict, it's going to put you in some weird positions, and it's all part of the process. I've never had a real estate deal where it was just, yeah, you qualify, all right, go to the closing table. It always gets a little tricky.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. So people should be expected or prepared to have paperwork kind of all together and everything and anything kind of ready.
If you have Venmo, PayPal, Cash App, anything like that, you got to have all your paperwork, anything financial, your pay stubs, your tax returns. The more paperwork for your finances you can put together, the better off you're going to be.
Mm-hmm. That's good. That's awesome. Let's move into coordinating the transaction.
Yeah, so my job is to basically be the middleman. So you and I are working together, and then we have the title company, we have the lender. If I'm selling your house, we have the buyer's agent and your buyer. If I'm helping you buy, we have the selling agent and the seller. And basically my job is to look at lender, look at title, look at what the other agent and his customer are doing, and basically make sure everyone has their ducks in a row. And they also have their job of making sure that their ducks are in a row, with whether it be lender with the underwriters, whether it be title with the closer. Some people have transaction coordinators of their own, so there's lots of moving parts. And sometimes people throw a stick into the gears, and it really creates a jam. So if you put an offer on a property and be like, yeah, we'll close in 30 days, we hope that happens. Sometimes it does, but oftentimes something happens. A lender goes on vacation, or title finds an encumbrance on the back chain that has to get resolved before they can close you. So that way your title insurance kicks in, and you're protected from the vultures, so to speak. Survey could be behind. You might fail a well test on the house, and the county might have to come out and bleach it and then retest. So sometimes there's little things that happen that can put you behind. So always anticipate having a cushion of protection time-wise. If you plan on closing in 30 days, maybe have plans for something 45 days out, just in case if that 30 days now turns into 37 days, you're covered. You don't want to be left in the rain.
Yep. No, it's good. Yeah, it's good to have that buffer, that cushion kind of. So you're making plans accordingly, because there's a lot of moving parts, as you mentioned, when you're moving.
Expect the unexpected.
That's yes, sir. When you are purchasing a house, it's not like you're buying a car and you just drive off the lot and you're like, all right, see you later.
Yeah, later they hand you the key. It's very complicated, and especially there was so much corruption in the early 2000s that it really made it hard on honest people to get into a good home.
Yeah, you have to have those safeguards in place for sure. And then let's kind of close out. You were mentioning a closing story earlier to me.
So we closed on our house in November of 2020, and not only did we have to extend twice, which put us behind by 2 weeks. Thank God my landlord was so chill. I was like, hey, I can't be out on the day that I said. And she's like, that's all right. You just stay there until whenever, and you let me know whenever you're out. I'm like, thanks. She didn't even charge me anything. It was great.
Oh my gosh.
She was an angel. So we get to the closing table. Now, mind you, I had driven 2 hours to Tampa to get Angela because she had to work on her laptop while we were driving to the closing table. So 2 hours there, 2 hours back. We sit down at the closing table, and the closer comes in and says, I cannot close you today. And I said some things, and we were not happy. You know, there was a mistake made on the lending end where someone had put the wrong date down. And so they had us down for the following day. And Title said that the dates that we have to match up with lending. And so since they have you for tomorrow, we can't close you until tomorrow. And I mean, they had to compensate us, which was great because we didn't have to pay for a mobile notary. They paid for it for us. However, I had just driven 4 hours to get Angela there, and I had to drive another 4 hours to get her back and to get myself.
The next day.
And I still don't have a house.
Yeah, so wait. So you had to drive 4 hours, and then you had to drive 4 hours the next day also?
It was the same day. I went 2 hours to Tampa to the closing table, so that way she could work on the way to the closing table. And then since we didn't close that day, and she had to go get her kids from school and all that, I had to drive her back to Tampa and then drive myself back to Ocala, so that way she could be at home whenever, when kids got home. And yeah, it was crazy.
Oh my gosh. That's and especially when you're in traffic, you're like, oh my gosh, dude, no.
Yeah, I was not happy. She was understandably upset, and they made it up to us by sending a mobile notary out, so that way paperwork could be signed without anyone having to drive anywhere. That made up for it. However, mistakes are costly, man. And it's sometimes mistakes can mean that people are without a house for a few days and gotta put themselves up in a hotel room, figure out where to park their moving truck. So as a customer, I would say protect yourself by anticipating there being hangups, because there almost always will be. There's so many moving parts, and it doesn't always run like a well-oiled machine.
Yeah, I would say that's more the exception when it's like a smooth where it's
goes
like,
well. I start getting nervous.
That's awesome. That's so funny. Yeah, and I think that's kind of like the honest truth. Like
any realtor can tell you that. If people are like, oh yeah, every transaction we do is super smooth, no, it's not, because not every customer uses the same bank. Sometimes you're just getting to know lenders because they came pre-qualified before they met you, and it's suddenly you're on hold with some automated thing from the ABC mortgage company where they signed up online in 5 minutes. It's ridiculous. So there's so many variables. Our job is to just be the middleman, kind of be your therapist, and get you through it. I've never had a customer that when they stuck it out, they didn't get into a house. I've had 100% success with getting my customers into their homes. It's just, if you expect to move to Florida, put your first offer in and move in 30 days, you're going to be very disappointed, because that's not always the case. What's up, guys? Chris the Ocala Realtor here. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, check out the next one, and don't forget to subscribe.